Hello and welcome to our 14th, I keep getting that wrong, but this is definitely the 14th Virtual Bridge session here with today Julie Degnan, or JJ as we like to call her. I'm sure it's not a typo, I'm sure it is just a cool thing. So today we're going to learn about how to embed employability, enterprise into education. And I think that's relevant for all young people, especially. And I was really keen to hear that you work through all ages, from nursery up to
18.
Up to 18, and
Yep.
that's really impressive. So I'd really love to learn more. So over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am going to share my screen with you. Easier said than done for me. Here we go. Can I hear a whoop whoop if you can see that, can you? Yeah, thank you. So that's just me there. First of all, before I start, there are no planned fire drills. Also, I hope you know your own way to your facilities. So I think everybody's turned off their mics. Grab yourself a cuppa and a half-eaten Easter egg. That's what I've got right here. And if you've got any questions, just type them into the chat and I'll try my best to answer them at the end. I've noticed my good friend Lisa is on. She will also be very good. She is right in with all the colleges and she'll be able to hopefully answer any questions that I cannot. So I'll just go ahead. My name's Julie Degnan. I look after Scotland's enterprising schools. My background's actually primary teaching. I've got over 13 years of primary teaching experience. Before that, I worked in software development. And before that, I worked for a lot of small business startup companies. So I did a wee stint of self-employment as well, which wasn't very successful, but we've added that to the experience. And nowadays I get to combine my passion for all of those things in my role for Scotland's enterprising schools. A wee bit of background to our project. We've been going 5 years now. We're a massive team of 2, so myself and my colleague Lindsay Smith get to travel the whole of Scotland, and we work with all teachers across the country under the Can Do agenda, and we basically are helping teaching staff to embed enterprise education. We want to equip people with the confidence and the can-do attitude themselves to be able to teach it in order to instill that in their students. We are funded year on year by the Scottish Government, so everything that we can do for you is completely free of charge. And we see enterprise as an ethos or a pedagogy, really, basically to equip our young people with the transferable skills that they're going to need for when they go out into the big bad world, rather than for specific occupation or for you know, owning their own business specifically, although we do encourage that also, but it's more about these transferable skills of enterprise that we're looking at. Today's aims, we don't have very long. Normally I can talk for about 2 hours. I'm going to try and cut it short. Just looking at why we should embed enterprise education in our teaching, how we can do it in practice, and just to raise awareness of the support that's available out there to you. First of all, I'm going to take you back in time a little bit. We're going to do a wee bit of reminiscing. You can put your hands up if you recognise any of this kind of stuff. So my generation, I grew up in the 80s, very different times. We were allowed to wander about in a 5-mile radius. Stranger danger was not in fashion at the very beginning. I think it came in about the 80s. PCs were coming into the households then at this point. This was, you know, PCs were around before that, but IBM really were responsible for bringing them into our houses. You remember those as well, good old VHS. Sony Walkman came in 1979 actually. They were released in Japan, came to the UK early 80s, and this was really our first experience of teenagers plugging in and ignoring parents, and look where we are nowadays. Perhaps you were a wee bit before my time, maybe recognise some of these things. My dad had one of these, we were not allowed to touch it. 70s, so first handheld pocket calculators came into being. The UK went decimal. Anyone have, you maybe still have these back in fashion nowadays? We're not allowed to touch that either. Maybe you're a wee bit younger than me, you grew up in the 90s, so A bit of a tech explosion in the 90s. I remember this from my high school days. There was one in the classroom, the computer science lab, and you had to queue up to get on it. Yeah, Nintendo Game Boy. Basically, the 90s was a time where households had more income, basically they were able to buy all of this cheap tech now. You had your satellite dishes, you had your gaming, cheap imports really were what really changed this in the 90s. And the brick-sized mobile phones came in. Why am I getting you to reminisce? Well, my point is that life was very different for us than it is now. We know that life moves, well, it has been moving a bit slower recently, but it's a fast-paced environment that these young people are growing up in now. And the way we teach nowadays is different from how we were taught ourselves. 30 years ago, as an educator, you would have probably learned your subject knowledge, become an expert over 3 or 4 years of study, and then spent the next 30 years really imparting that knowledge onto your students. And whilst knowledge is still vital, it's no longer the power that it once was. Life was much slower back then. Very, very different now. So we need to change the way that we are teaching, but not in a massive way, and that's what I want to show you today. Just some headlines. Media has a wonderful way of sensationalising a lot of things, but a question that we ask when we go out into schools to work with staff is, what does the world of work, what's it going to look like for our current students? What type of jobs will they have and careers and that kind of thing? I mean, many jobs that exist nowadays did not exist when I was young. You've got social influencers, social media marketing managers, all these kind of things. And it's just to think about ourselves when we were growing up. Did you have a focus? Were you thinking about a job for life? And that's certainly the environment that I grew up in. And thinking about today's young people that could possibly have 40 jobs in their 50-year career, and the reasons for those types of changes really. So we've got maybe higher ambition nowadays, continuous upskilling, lifelong learning, loads more diverse opportunities. Temporary, short-term contracts obviously have an impact on these kind of things. Changes in technology, obviously. Part-time roles becoming a lot more common. It might be that our young people have to have several jobs in order to be able to afford. So just as educators, we need to reflect on this and think about how we teach and how we're preparing our young people. So as I said, do we need to change? Well, yes and no. We're already teaching cross-curricular courses. We're incorporating digital literacy across subjects. The themes from Curriculum for Excellence, like creativity, learning for sustainability, enterprise, they are featured throughout our teaching and learning. And we see enterprise as a theme that's not taught in isolation. It's part of interdisciplinary learning. And we want to ensure that these skills are not taught in little isolated islands, really. We want them to permeate the wider curriculum. Young people are going to need to change direction many times, as do we nowadays. And it's just about equipping them with the skills to do that. I quite like Skills 4.0 for doing this kind of thing. When we go out into schools, quite often they've got their own skills framework in place, whether that's been introduced at a cluster level or a local authority level. We quite like Skills 4.0 just because it's so accessible. We use it to kind of advocate a common approach to skills focused learning. I know there's loads of different options out there. You've got Skills Development Scotland's My World of Work skill reflection tool. I heard Grant Taylor talking about West College Scotland's Essential Skills software, and we quite like this framework. The Skills Development Scotland refer to these skills as meta skills. We call them enterprising skills. You might call them transferable skills. At the end of the day, they're all the same skills for life, learning and work. When we've been out and about in schools talking about these, we find teachers quite often say to us, you know, my pupils can identify when they've used communication. they are happy to say they've collaborated. Maybe leadership, beyond those 3 key skills, they kind of struggle. And we think that a lot of staff themselves struggle with actually articulating what the skills are, when they're used, how they can be transferred across different disciplines. So a skills framework is really, really good. It's a robust way of helping staff to articulate the skills, to enable our young people to do that. A simple way that we say to staff to incorporate the skills language, this kind of skills literacy, is to display these skills first and foremost, to talk about them with the young people and discuss what they mean. At the beginning of a lesson, let them know what skills you're going to expect them to use, and then in a wee plenary again at the end, have that discussion. 5 minutes would be all it would take. What skills did you use? Did you see anyone else using any other skills at any point? Do you have strengths in particular areas? Are there weaknesses? And it's just about really starting off that discussion about what these skills mean and where they can use them. And then as well to discuss where could you use them in the outside world. Do you know anyone who's in a job that uses these skills, that kind of thing? It's just really increasing their literacy of skills is what we're looking to do. At Scotland's Enterprising Schools, we use these wee enterprise signposts. We say that in order to embed enterprise education, you have that skills literacy conversation with them throughout. But if you can apply these kind of 6 areas, these signposts, to any activity that you're doing, you are enabling them to become enterprising. So we see this as a pedagogy rather than as an add-on. It can be used in resources. We provide a lot of free resources on our website, and we try to stick to this framework. So you can do an activity or a lesson that would be considered enterprising. However, we think that you can also look at anything that you're teaching, and if you can hit each of these 6 signposts in an activity or a lesson, you're enabling them to become enterprising. Now, the idea is not to grow lots of wee mini Richard Bransons. Not everyone is going to become an entrepreneur, but some of them might do, and we want to encourage that. But we're really wanting our young people to develop their entrepreneurial mindset. I've just tagged on at the bottom there the entrepreneurship definition from Entrecomp, and we see that as when people act upon the opportunities and ideas and transform them into value for others. And I think a really key point of that is that the value can be financial, but it could also be cultural or social. Quite often when we're out and about in schools, there's a misconception that enterprise is about running a business for a financial gain. And we're really keen to let people see that it's that pedagogy of learning and teaching. It's not always about a financial gain. And quite often the young people really connect with that cultural or that social value that they can add. When we're out and about as well, we also set enterprise within the developing a young workforce context. I'm sure you're very aware of this, that the overall goal of the DYW strategy was to reduce the levels of youth unemployment. Enterprise education is featured within that 7-year plan. We know that it's going to continue. The regional groups have been given funding beyond 2021. So it will continue, maybe under a different name, who knows, but we're still going ahead with that. Obviously the latest levels, I'm not sure if they're the most up to date. I've got there from November last year, 7.2%, but that obviously fluctuates. So the caveat there is that many young people are on 0 hours contracts. The timing of the year of taking these figures is maybe during the school holidays when a lot of young people are in employment, that kind of thing. But it's interesting for us to keep our eye on that and see how that's affected. For anyone that's not aware, the DYW agenda contains these 3 documents. We find that among schools the awareness of these documents and the engagement with them is still quite patchy. So we like to raise awareness of these, and the one in particular that we do really push to staff that we work with is the career education standard. We find it's really accessible. It lists the entitlements for staff. and it's staff that teach pupils from ages 3 to 18. So all staff we work with right through from the early years right through to senior phase, and the expectations of the staff, the parents, the carers, the employers, and Skills Development Scotland are also contained in there. And it's quite an accessible document, an interesting read as well to see for yourself as an educator what's expected of you. We quite often direct people to the ICANN statements in the appendix for help when they are planning enterprise lessons and experiences. Just really interesting to look at the senior phase and the specific and ICANN statements. They should be aware of the enterprising culture out there, but also what it means to be an entrepreneur, and that might be something that staff really need to find out about first before they can let their young people know. So we can help with all of these things at Scotland's Enterprising Schools. I'm aware that I'm really just talking through this as quickly as I can to pack in as much as possible. I'm aware time's moving on. Everything that I've told you and in much more detail is featured on our website. You can find us at enterprisingschools.scot. If I go in there, I can show you very quickly. We were originally set up purely as a web-based service. My brain doesn't work and talk at the same time. So everything that you need is on here. We link up with partners for schools, partners for educators really. We work closely with Young Enterprise Scotland, Social Enterprise Academy. These partners, Bridge to Business, which some of you might be very aware of, they can work directly with the young people. We were set up in order to work with staff, but to get the whole picture of the enterprise education agenda, you really need to speak to some of our partners, and we have loads of them listed on here. Loads of them have resources for you to use. They can work directly with young people. For example, the Bridge to Business service there, Lisa is on here. I know she might answer some of your questions later on. They're operating in 9 colleges across Scotland just now, and they're working with students who are interested in setting up their own businesses, but also some of them might just be interested in developing their enterprising skills. They've got loads of stuff they can do, connect your young people with role models, running master classes, challenges. They've got small grants that can be applied for. So all of these partners on here on our website can come out and work with your young people. We really want to share interesting practice from across Scotland as well. We've got it all on there from early years right through to senior phase, and we find this is a really inspiring way to spread the word. Anyone that's listed on our website as interesting practice, they've got their contact details on there. They're happy for you to get in touch either through us or straight with them, and they can come out and speak to you, help you develop your enterprise education agenda and see what suits you. We also have loads of resources on there. We've got lesson plans, professional reflection tools if you want to gauge where you are at the moment. We have online learning modules, which have been accredited by the GTCS. Spending a lot of time recently on our home learning resources. A lot of these are available for young people to download directly and work on it at home. And you'll see our 6 wee key enterprise signposts come up in all of our resources to ensure that what they're doing is really helping them develop their enterprising skills. So I'm sorry about how fast I was talking. That was a whistle-stop tour of what we can offer you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions I can, if you've got any.
So I just have unlocked people's ability to unmute themselves. So okay. While they are busy unmuting themselves, can I ask what's the kind of youngest age that you can start introducing the concept of enterprise and entrepreneurship, and could you give some examples of how that's done?
Yeah, we say 3 years old, purely because we're restricted to working with education. I'm sure some of them are starting before that, thinking of my own children. We have got some early learning examples on here, and something that we find quite often is when we go out and into the early years, they're doing it naturally. Children at that age are doing it actually without really being led. So you go into the nursery and they'll be playing at shops, or they'll be dressed up as the postal service and all this kind of thing. And it's really inspiring to see when you go out. Westercraig's nursery in Glasgow, for example, are fantastic. Those children can go out, they go out to the local fruit market, they can negotiate, bring the price down, they're buying their own fruit, they are making their own food, which they would then sell to the local community. They've done loads, and a lot of it, it's not so much about making money, but it's about letting those kids know that they have a voice and they have an impact on their local community. They've developed their outdoor space. Their voices are at the forefront. So often in Westercraig's, the children are asked what they want to do, and they're helped to plan. So they take on that leadership, and they're building their own forest school at the moment. And those kids could buy and sell you, to be honest. We went along to visit them, and they'd been working with a local artist here and been painting. You can see their work around the edges, and they made these into cards. They went along to the Christmas craft fair. They were selling them. They sold. I had to buy one when I was there. They were little videos here of them taking the money. They were calculating, 3-year-olds calculating the money, putting it in the till. And while we were there, this wee boy here actually said, "Do you know what? We could set up a toy shop." And this just came from him. And the teachers there are absolutely happy to facilitate it. And they're like, "Yeah, do you know what? We'll add that onto our list of things to do." So these kids know that they have a voice. They know that they have choice, and they're doing it naturally. And it's really having a positive impact on them and their local community. So really inspiring to see.
There were two other things. One is Walter had typed in a comment earlier on. Although we've heard of the term social enterprise before, we've not heard, or Walter hadn't heard of the term social entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So is there a slight difference there? And also after that, Rosemary, I think, has a question.
Okay. I think they're connected. A social entrepreneur basically is wanting to have an impact on their community, on society. When we go out into schools and we talk about social enterprise, there's always a little bit of confusion there, and they think it's not about making money, it's just about adding value to the community. So it takes a wee bit of an explanation that you're there to, your sole purpose is not to make profit, but you will need to fund your enterprise in some way. So they have a focus on the value that they want to add to their community, but they quite often have a finance generating aspect to their business in order to provide that value. A lot of young people want to feed any profits into other charities that already exist. So we take them through that kind of social enterprise model to show them that they can be the charity, they can provide that value, and that finance, that profit that they can make can go then into their own charity, which is quite an empowering thing for them to realise. That I think when they're younger and they have that social entrepreneurship mindset, they want to raise money for charity. When they progress a wee bit on, they realise that they can actually be that service themselves, and with that funding in place they can make it sustainable. So that's quite interesting to see that happening in schools.
Thank you. That was a very clear explanation, and I applaud all your efforts along those lines. Thanks.
Thank you, Walter.
And I think Rosemary had a question.
Hi, Julie. That was really interesting, actually. I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think that one of the challenges, in particular also the part of the Scotland challenge, is about getting young people to articulate where they get the value from. So little 3-year-olds in the nursery, exactly as you say, they just say, "I want this, we can do this," and they are very endearing, and that can be channeled. I think as the children get older and go through different stages of both primary, secondary school and university as well, and colleges, and there's the ability to engage with the learner in terms of articulating where that value is coming from that contributes to enterprise entrepreneurship is lost, or else it's dissipated in some way. And I think as educators, one of our primary roles is actually to develop that cohesion and being able to understand what those skills are. So although the I can statements are obviously something that has to be articulated and it fits nicely into a framework and get all of that, I think it's still around getting the students, whatever stages, to be able to say, this is why, and this is how. And I'll just give you a very funny example. A number of years ago, I went to collect my own daughter from nursery, and I was amused to go in and say, you know, they had the little shop set up. It was the after school club. So one kid, it was a little group of boys, and I knew the little boys. So one of them was sat in the cash registers taking the money, and the other one was ordering arms and weapons. Oh, how I laughed. But he was able to articulate and understand what the markets look like. So I thought, good on you, son. But this seriously is something we do need to develop. It's, yeah. Thank you, Julie.
Absolutely. I agree. And it was something as a teacher I used to struggle with. You know, if I was talking to Kenji about this, if a young person, you know, anyone comes in and says, you know, have you done this? You know, have you been working on these skills? That someone will always say, no, we've not done that in our class. And I used to feel like if they can't articulate that, then it's almost unfair that it looks as though they've not been taught that. And now, knowing what I know, they've only had half of the value from it if they cannot articulate it. And yeah, that's a big part of our job, to help them voice that, whether that's in an interview situation or on an application form or just in the workplace. And I agree with you, it is lost along the way. And I'm not sure if it's to do with that self-confidence. And I think part of the value of enterprise education is that they can gain a wee bit of that self-confidence back again.
Yeah, I think that it's mechanisms, it's integrating appropriate mechanisms to capture the voice is what it's about, which doesn't always fit neatly into Curriculum for Excellence or any other framework that is being used for learning. So it requires quite a positive intervention to create soft approaches to capturing that voice, and to somehow then get the individuals to understand that. So some of the work I've been doing, and I've brought this up in previous questions, is I am doing quite a lot of work now with what I call reflective logs, but they're basically being used just to capture whatever that voice is, and it will vary from words, or it would pictures, or you know, little samples or doodles or anything that is appropriate that and what people want to use. So as you've got, and I think the idea of capturing something in one space is helpful because it lets folk to look back, and this for all age groups up to sort of CPD for adult learners as well in all different sectors. Yeah, there's something around that which we talk about, and we talk about reflective practice, but there's something around for entrepreneurship, for building enterprise skills, around that reflection, and not for business startup necessarily, but for around the sort of the enhancements elements.
Absolutely, I would like to find out more about that. Actually, that sounds really useful. Yeah.
Well, I will. I don't think I'm already joined with you in LinkedIn. I'll do that, and then that'll put me through. Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Can I ask, Joe? You're a lecturer, and your subject area is C is the memory thing again.
Hairdressing.
Hairdressing. Okay, so a lot of your students, obviously, they don't all include that within that kind of up to 18 range, but a lot of them have to deal with the concept of enterprise, because many of your students will graduate and go on to self-employment and working themselves. So I suppose it's a twofold question. Do you think, Julie, some of your materials are relevant to post-18 audiences, or could they be used? And Joe, what kind of approaches are used in colleges when you're dealing specifically with preparing your students for that kind of a life of enterprise in many cases?
Yes, please, Julie.
You want me to answer first there, Joe?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and our resources at the moment that we have on offer probably would not be suitable post-18. We are currently working on expanding our training offer to staff to be more relevant to that age group. So we're looking at basically training on business approaches to ideas generation, things like brainstorming and prototyping, pitching, that kind of thing, and offering that, which is basically relevant to teaching for any age. The partner that I would recommend for that kind of age group would be Bridge to Business. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're in 9 colleges at the moment, and they can help individual students or groups of students who are interested in setting up their own enterprise. But it's certainly something that we're looking into adapting our training for staff to include, yeah.
Okay, just because we're coming up to our 30 minutes, I think formally, just for the recording, I'd just like to thank everyone for attending. You're more than welcome to stay for a bit of informal chat afterwards, but thanks for staying here for the recording, and we hope to see you again at some future recording or a live session. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.